you had it all. You were two working parents, you and your husband, living a great life until God opened your eyes. And then what
Yeah,
happened?
we definitely, to the world standards, had it all. We were living the good life, and but there was an emptiness in our home, in our family. I noticed it in our kids, and there was just a disconnect that my heart knew that there was more for our family. But really, the breaking point came one day when I was listening to my son have a conversation with some of his friends. They called themselves jerks, junior educated rich kids. And I was mortified because that was not the attitude that I wanted to cultivate in my son. And he was bragging about he could get his dad to land a helicopter to pick him up from school, and just this whole attitude of materialism and entitlement. It just broke my heart, honestly, to see that in my child. And so I started praying a pretty scary prayer, whatever it takes, Lord, to get us away from this, to change our family for the better, to glorify you, and to realign our hearts with your purposes and plans for us. And he answered that prayer in a pretty dramatic way. It was not comfortable. It was very difficult. And there were times where my husband looks at me now when our house is chaotic and we don't have the nanny and we don't have the black Amex. And he says, "You prayed for this." Like, I did. And you know what? I would pray it again because of the fruit that we've gotten to experience since making big changes in our home. It's worth everything that we sacrificed. Absolutely. Over time, my husband started noticing some changes in me and in our kids. And we were on a road trip one day and we started a conversation. And he said, "I'm starting to get it. I kind of see why you're willing to say yes to painting on the front windows and letting the kids experiment with the microwave and letting the girls make up songs in the back seat, even though I would much prefer quiet." He said, "But isn't it more inconvenient? Doesn't it cause you more work?" And I thought, you're right, it does. It definitely creates more work, but I'm 100% convinced that it's worth it. And so that's really the heart of an inconvenient parent, is a parent that acknowledges that it is hard, that it does take extra work, but our vision is on the long term. It's on the future. What is it that we're trying to do as parents? I think a lot of times we lose sight of that in the day-to-day monotony of just, surviving. And so my heart for this book and calling it Inconvenient Parenting is to encourage parents to get their eyes on the end goal. What is the purpose of parenting? And that's to help our kids become who God created them to be. And so whatever sacrifices that we must make to reach that goal, it's always going to be worth it, right?
So when you started doing all this, did you pray for patience? Because I can tell you now, being a mother myself many years ago and seeing my daughters go through it, the patience can run dry.
Oh,
How do you like,
absolutely.
how do you overlook it? How do you overlook what they're doing? Like if they're making a mess, I know you wrote this
Right.
in your
Well,
book.
yeah. Well, and honestly, I can look back even to the beginning of my journey as a mom. I was very type A. I was very, protective of my firstborn. I didn't want him to ever get hurt. I didn't want anything bad to ever happen. And so I was a hover. I was one of those moms that kind of followed him around like a bubble. And God slowly began to release my hands and trust my child, myself, and the Lord. And so it was a journey. I wouldn't say that instantly I just prayed for patience and God gave it to me, but it was a slow God opening my eyes to the reality that I'm just a shepherd of my children. And really, God is the one that's ultimately in control of their lives. And as I saw my kids as God's, it made it a lot easier for me to parent them in a way that I could be inconvenienced because that's what God had called me to do. But also, I'm very much a big proponent for daily spending time with the Lord, daily spending time seeking His will for your heart, for your family. And that's the process that really allowed me to have grace for my kids and patience. And, it's a fine line. And my husband and I talk about this often between having grace and overlooking the messes and being permissive and letting them get away with things. And so it is a constant conversation with the Lord of how do I walk this line in a way that honors you? And I don't do it right every time. I mess up, but God's grace is so good to intervene, and or I know that he will teach my kids the lessons that I may miss along the way. And so just staying connected with the Lord is the most important. Sorry. is the most important part of this process.
I love the wisdom that you're putting out there to all these, parents out there, especially the moms, you got to clean up the mess, but sometimes you got to overlook it too, is basically what you're saying, and it's God honoring. So, so what practical examples can you give parents to nurture traits in their kids?
I don't want parents to look at this book as a list of things that they've got to add into their schedule because we're all busy. We've got enough going on as it is. So it's not things that you have to add in. It's more of a change of what you're already doing. While we're driving to school or to the grocery store, being intentional about watching out for ways that we can point out creation. Look at that cloud formation. Isn't it incredible the way that God made the clouds? And just getting our children's eyes on the world around them outside of themselves and what's going on inside the car can really awaken wonder in our children. And I talk about the importance of wonder and how science shows what God already knew, that wonder makes us less selfish. Isn't that incredible? Looking at nature and creation makes us more aware of the world around us and less focused on ourselves. So it's just a small practical thing as we're going about our day, looking for ways that we can point out wonder. And if we have time to take our kids outside and spend time in nature, that's even better. But it's just an intentionality. It's a shift in mindset. When our kids are playing and they say, "Hey, mom, come play with us," it's really easy to say, "Oh, mom's tired," or my knees are so sore. I can't get down on the floor. But when we shift our mindset and we realize that it's important for connection and to play with our kids, play is good for us as parents. It reduces our stress levels. It helps to bond connections between children. And so just remembering those things practically will make us more likely to join our kids in on the fun and the play. I have not always been the playful, fun mom. That my husband is the playful one in our family. But since being introduced to these qualities, I have been much more intentional about saying yes to being playful and silly and fun. And I'm so grateful because there's so many memories that I would have missed if I would have said, "Oh, I don't know, I'm not going to go outside." My youngest daughter, one day, we were in the middle of homeschooling and I was working with one of my other girls and she kind of disappeared and she yells for me outside. Again, I could have easily said, "No, Charlotte, it's school time. Come to the table." But I was choosing to lean into playfulness. And so I said, "Okay, what's going on?" She attacked me with silly string. She thought it was the funniest thing ever, just spraying mommy with silly string. And I laughed and she laughed. And it was 5 minutes of an interruption in our day. But the rest of the day went so much better because we had that moment of connection. I let her get that laughter out. The stress levels went down in me and in her, and the rest of the day went more smoothly. And so, I guess a practical tip is just look for ways that we can do these things as we go.
Yeah. I love the way that your daughter broke the wall down.
Yeah, absolutely. She's our youngest, and she's really good at that. Spontaneous tickle fights or just making silly faces at me. She knows how to break that wall and really bring fun into our day.
That's great. That's
And
awesome.
unfortunately, a lot of times we see that as misbehavior, when we're trying to get something done. And I've been guilty of this at times where I'm so focused on the task in front of me that I get annoyed by their silliness, by their misbehavior. But my heart is to continue to remind myself of the important, nothing is more important than our relationships with our kids. And these moments of fun foster that. And so instead of seeing it as a bad behavior, I want to see it as a gift, as an opportunity to connect. And that's my heart for other parents too, that maybe have a playful, silly kid that can be annoying at times, but to just shift their thinking to see it as a blessing, as a playful quality that God placed in our child for our good and for theirs.
Which overall makes me think of God giving children to us as gifts, right?
Absolutely.
They are the gifts to
For
us.
me. Um, I don't know if you're aware, this last summer, we lost our 16-year-old son. Very tragic, sudden accident, 3 weeks in ICU. We still don't know for sure what happened while he was in ICU, but ultimately he passed away. And our family obviously has been rocked by this tragedy. The book was supposed to come out in August, and he passed away at the end of June. And you know, I questioned the Lord, why, God, did you let me write a parenting book that I dedicated to my 4 children, and then one of my children gets taken away too soon, in my opinion. Um, and I grappled with that. But I could see God's kindness as I've grieved and processed and really cried out to the Lord over months and months, that the qualities that he introduced to me, the way that I chose to parent inconveniently, the sacrifices that we were willing to make allowed me to have no regrets sitting by Joey's hospital bed. I looked back at his childhood and I was overwhelmed with gratitude that I was there, that I laid aside my career and my desires in the short term to long term experience watching Joey become who God created him to be. And his faith towards the very end was so rock solid and humbling as a mom. I was just encouraged by his trust in the Lord, even in unthinkable circumstances. And so I've seen firsthand what God can do when a mom and a dad pursue him and choose to lay aside their own comforts and conveniences to do the hard work, because now I have a son in heaven with the Lord, and I got to be there for every moment of it. And I'm so, so grateful. And the things that we had in place before the accident, we talked about emotions, we prioritized relationships, we made room for joy and laughter, even in hard stuff. All of that has set us up for a much healthier grief experience with my three other daughters. They feel comfortable talking to me about their feelings, and we go to the Lord regularly with our anger and our questions and our hurts, because we've been doing that all along. And so, again, I'm so grateful to God for his faithfulness at bringing me through this journey of writing the book and thinking about these qualities, because I don't even want to imagine where we would be today, God, having gone through what we went through with Joey, if we hadn't, if we would have been where we were in Houston all the way back in the beginning, where our family's heart was about what the world gave and we were empty. I'm afraid of what things we would have turned to fill the void that was within us. But because God brought us where we were, he was filling us and connecting us with the church and pouring his word into our hearts. I'm not saying that it's been easy. Grief is awful and losing a child is unthinkable. And yet God has been so good to us in the midst of it. And so I'm so grateful I get to talk about God's faithfulness and share with other parents the things that God has taught us and the ways I've seen my kids blossom. And so I'm more passionate than I was when I first started writing this book about this message of inconvenient parenting, because we don't know when our last days with our kids are going to be. And so we should parent every day with the end goal of helping them become who God created them to be, because they may leave the world sooner than we anticipated.
Hmm. I'm so sorry that you and your family have been going through this. And I know that there's got to be grieving parents out there going through this as well. And I know that my heart goes out to you, and my heart goes out to these parents that are really struggling. But I'm very, very happy and honored to have you here to talk about something so important as this. And I'm glad that the Lord continued to press this on your heart to make this book, Inconvenient Parenting, happen. And so, where can they get this book and find out more about you, Melissa?
Okay, well, the book is on Amazon, moody.com, their book yeah, Moody website. It basically anywhere books are sold right now, Barnes and Nobles, Proverbs 31, anywhere that you like to buy books, you can get it. We're working on getting my Inconvenient Parenting website up where you can buy directly from me. But in the meantime, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm melissahannigan.author on Instagram, and I'm getting ready to do an Inconvenient Parenting challenge where I'm going to give prompts and fun ideas of ways to connect with our kids every day. So yeah, be on the lookout for that, and just follow along. I'm very transparent with our grief journey there as well, and the ways that God has been faithful to us. So yeah, come connect with me. I would love to talk more about all that God has done and encouraging others.
That's wonderful. And what would you like to leave my audience with today?
I guess if I had one thing I would like to say, it's stay connected to the Lord, no matter what. Like, read my book or not, but stay with the Lord, walk with him, because he is faithful to show you exactly what you need to do for your family. So walk with him, spend time with him, and listen to him.
Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts on our conversation by putting your comments below and visit thecallwithNancySabato.com to learn more about me and what we do here on the ministry. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share. Your support means so much to us.